Hi, welcome to Community Women's Voices. This show is a joint production between NARAL Pro-Choice Washington and the Seattle chapter of NOW. In my work at NARAL, I have the wonderful opportunity to work with men and women of all different ages. However, I often get the question from second-wave feminists, the women who have been doing this really important work for a very long time, since the 1970s. They ask me, where are the young people? And then they go on to tell me that they've been doing this work for a long time, they feel really tired, and they want the young people to step up. I feel very happy that I'm able to inform them, guess what? The young people are stepping up. In fact, in my day-to-day work in the office, the main group of volunteers who come in on a regular basis are high school students. And in addition to that, at all of our rallies and major events, high school-aged and college-aged youth have a major presence. But I want to validate and recognize that there is a reason why second-wave feminists have the perception that young people are not stepping up. And I think that that reason is because the way young people engage in the struggle for reproductive freedom, or just politics in general, looks very different from the ways that the second-wave feminists were engaging in political action in the 1970s. So, in order to understand a little bit better how youth think about activism and politics, and pro-choice politics in particular, I have three wonderful people in the studio with me, and we're going to chat about that a little bit. I'd like to welcome to the SCAN studio Heather Hughes. She's a Students for Choice organizer at the University of Washington. We have Samir Ronaday. He organized high school and college students to volunteer for the Democratic Party during the 2006 election season. He's also a NARAL volunteer, and he is also currently volunteering with the Washington Bus Project.
Yeah, Washington Bus Project.
Washington Bus Project. And we have Marissa Wilson, and she's been involved with NARAL either as a volunteer or as an intern or in some other capacity for the last 3 years, and she's currently a junior at Kent Ridge High School. So thank you so much for coming over to SCAN today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So why don't we just find out, do any of you have a story or some aha moment, something that can describe why you decided to become involved in politics or activism?
I started with when Bush originally signed the federal partial birth abortion ban, and I had grown up with my mother, who had grown up after Roe v. Wade. Really, she was pretty young, so she always thought abortion rights and pro-choice rights were a moot issue, and always told me so. And once I realized that there might actually be at risk for me and my future and the next generation, that it was scary, and it was eye-opening to me, and I knew I had to do something about it.
Okay. Did anybody else have an experience that propelled them into action?
When I was in 8th grade, my teacher, my history teacher, made us read the newspaper to learn about different issues that were going on. And I read a letter to the editor in the Seattle PI, and it was talking about a protest that was going to go on in Washington, D.C. called the March for Women's Lives. And I had never really been involved in any kind of politics or government or anything like that before that point in time. And it just kind of shocked me to think that that right that I just kind of took for granted could be at risk. And so I went home and I talked to my mom. I said, hey, can we go over to D.C. To do this march? And that really kind of started the whole political movement for me. And I found NARAL through there, and Planned Parenthood, and a bunch of other great pro-choice organizations.
What was it like to go to the march? How did it impact you personally?
It was so empowering to have, I think the figures are 1.2 million marchers were there in D.C., and it blew my mind to think that there was a community out there that supported the same things that I did. And I left so empowered and thought that I really had a voice, and people wanted to help me get that out there.
Very cool. So, does the term political activist or political organizer, do you identify in that way, or do those terms resonate with you?
Yeah, I mean, they definitely resonate with me, because I think that just from like what I did on the campaign, I felt like I was, organizing people not only to vote just for Democrats, but just to organize them just to get out there and vote, period. And I felt that was really gratifying to me, just to go out and do that and help people get involved in the civics process. And from that, I kind of learned how to mobilize people around issues. And even though I'm not on the campaign now, it's so easy to just to identify issues out there in the community, from crime in your neighborhood to, you know, some law that's going to be passed that's going to affect you in the city, and how to rally people around that. And I'm always like just talking to my friends and just talking to people. So I would definitely about these issues and how we can address it. So I definitely consider myself to be like in that
An
area.
organizer.
Yeah.
How about you, Heather? Do you consider yourself to be an organizer?
Organizer's a bit harder for me.
How do you identify that?
I think more of as a political activist, or at least that's what I wish to. That's more of my goal, is to be a political activist. And when I first heard the term, I thought it was awe-inspiring, because I've read a lot about the second wave of feminist history, and I just want to be active, and so I like the term activist.
How does that differentiate for you then? How do you see being an activist different from being an organizer?
I do organize a lot, but when I initially started out being interested in politics, I was more on the activist side, and I went to a lot of rallies and protests and marches and such, and so I felt that was something more that...
So it's more about your individual participation as opposed to getting other people to do it.
Yeah, and I'm relatively new to the more organizing side of things.
Okay. Marissa, you're still in high school, and I know that you have in the past tried to organize your peers around reproductive rights and health issues. What was that like for you?
I started off and I was really pretty optimistic about the whole thing, because lots of my friends were pro-choice and had the same beliefs that I did. But when I actually went to the administration and tried to get a group started in my school, it really kind of came into light how conservative my area was. And it was really difficult because the administration was saying that it was too controversial to have something so pointed in one direction, I guess, started in the schools, or they'd have to have like a pro-life kind of group that would help balance it out so more people could be represented or things like that. And so it really just, it kind of went downhill as far as getting a group started in the school. So I went around to my friends and started my own group just through the community.
So in terms of working with your peers, what worked or what didn't work?
Just really meeting with them face to face rather than sending out newsletters or things like that, because it really resonates with people more if you can connect with them.
So peer-to-peer contact.
Yeah, exactly. And that just, it really proved beneficial to the whole movement.
How about as a college student, Heather, what sorts of things have you seen work and what hasn't worked?
It's really important, I think, on our level to keep it fun, because if you just talk at people, and while it's a very serious issue and very important, it drags people down if you don't lighten it up and have some fun with it. So we'll have more of a casual setting and not just a lecture, and sometimes we'll get drinks together or go out to dinner and discuss it over that, and that really helps loosen things up.
And so you're both talking really about sort of community education and informing your peers about the issues, which is fantastic, and thank you for doing that work. But it's a little different from what you've done, Samir, which is actually to organize folks to try to get young people, to try to get them to vote.